My daughter's husband threw her out into the street, thinking I was just a weak, retired man, harmless. He didn't know I had spent 30 years tracking men like him. At 4 in the morning, my phone shook on the nightstand as if it were alive. It wasn't a call, but a message. The moment I read it, my blood ran cold. Come pick up your daughter from parking lot T4. We don't want her anymore. He didn't say, I don't want her. He didn't say, we disagree. He didn't say, we need to talk. No. He said, we don't want her anymore, as if my daughter were a piece of old furniture, as if my grandchildren were belongings to be discarded. I threw on my clothes in seconds. I drove toward Barajas Airport without even feeling the steering wheel under my hands. All I could hear were the beats of my heart hammering in my chest. The sky was black, Madrid asleep, and I was wide awake, and a storm of rage had yet to erupt. I found her there, in a corner of the parking lot, inside her car. My daughter Elena was shivering under a thin blanket, her children clinging to her, half asleep, holding on as if letting go would make them disappear. I approached slowly, as if one wrong word could break her further. Daughter, I whispered. What happened? Eleanor lifted her head. Her eyes were red, not just from that night's tears, but from many nights before. Dad, she said, her voice cracking. They took everything from me. I remembered the last time I saw her truly smile, when she asked for my help on her project, when she spoke about her dream with a passion that filled me with pride. That's why I invested. That's why I signed. That's why I trusted. And what about the $150,000? I asked, my voice low, though my chest burned with anger. What happened to the money I put in for your project? Her face crumbled like a wet wall. Julian and his mother. They took everything, Dad. They said I'm crazy. They changed passwords, took the keys, emptied the accounts, and now, she looked at her children, now they've thrown me out as if I'm nothing. That was when something inside me shifted. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a blow. It wasn't an outburst of rage. It was the precise sound of a weapon being readied. Because there's a certain type of man in life, charming in public, cruel in private. I had spent 30 years learning how to recognize them, how to track them, how to see the pattern before it's too late. I wiped my daughter's tears with my thumb, looked into her eyes, and said the only thing she needed to hear. Pack your bags, Elena. We're leaving. This ends today. Julian thought he had won. He thought he had left a lone mother in the street. But he didn't know. He had awakened someone with nothing left to lose. We packed in less than 5 minutes. Elena was silent, but she held my hand, feeling the weight of what had happened and the weight of what was coming. The children didn't understand everything, but they felt safe for the first time in hours. We got into the car and left the parking lot. I drove cautiously, but every part of me was on high alert. Every streetlight, every shadowed tree, every parked car, it felt like they were watching us, and they knew we were coming. After a few minutes, Eleanor spoke softly. Dad, what are you going to do? I'll get back what was taken, I said, without hesitation. I didn't explain how, but she understood. She knew this wouldn't be just a verbal confrontation. Then the first event. A black car followed us along a deserted highway. I didn't need to think. I knew the ways of these men. They appear suddenly, watch, and apply pressure through fear. But I had learned to read their patterns. I pressed the accelerator, and the black car followed us, until it vanished at the first dark intersection. We arrived at a small apartment I had prepared in secret weeks ago. It was equipped for any emergency. External cameras, double locks, a hidden escape route. Elena finally breathed, giving a tired smile, but there was no time to celebrate. The planning night began. I took an old notebook and started writing everything. Names, dates, contacts, bank accounts. Every step Julian had taken was already logged in my mind after 30 years of tracking men like him. I wasn't just an angry father. I was a trained investigator, skilled at dealing with those who thought they were untouchable. 2 days later, the second event. A cryptic email to Elena. Just a few words. "You are not alone." Then a link to a video. Elena and her children watched the screen in disbelief. The video showed Julian in his office, smiling in front of his lawyer, playing the victim, as if we were the guilty ones. He knew Elena couldn't face him alone, but he didn't know I would be there. The next day, the execution phase began. I started gathering evidence, conversations, receipts, recordings, anything proving the fraud. I also crafted a plan to confront Julian in a public place, where he couldn't use physical threats. I planned everything, every escape route, every camera, every weakness he might exploit against me. Then the third event, a bait attempt. Elena received a call from an unknown number. Julian's calm, smiling voice said, "If you want to get something back, come alone." But we didn't fall for it. I had prepared a car with cameras recording every movement. We moved strategically. That evening, the confrontation scene was perfect. A crowded cafe where no one could threaten us unseen. Elena entered, and I followed, adrenaline pumping. Julian appeared, sharp-eyed, trying to control the situation with words. But I had prepared a wall of evidence. Every laugh, every glance, every hint of his deception. The confrontation began with words, then escalated into a series of legal and social pressures. Allies began appearing. Employees who had witnessed his fraud, neighbors who had uncovered his lies, lawyers ready to face this chaos. In the end, there was no physical violence, but there was a psychological and legal victory. Julian could no longer manipulate Elena. He could no longer threaten us. And I was no longer just a weak, retired man. I was someone who could not be ignored, someone time had trained to read men before they acted. When we returned to the small apartment, Eleanor sat beside me, the children finally asleep. She smiled and said, "Dad, you did it." I smiled back, but I knew this night wasn't over. It was just the beginning of a new world. A world where we feared no shadows. A world where we knew how to face every man who thought he was stronger than us.